Welcome to the Atom Ventures podcast. My name is Bhairav Patel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Atom Ventures. And today I'm here with Joanna Vargas from the Get Up Girl podcast. Say hello, Joanna.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Bhairav. I'm so excited to jump in and talk about some juicy stuff today.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about the podcast that you have, the Get Up Girl podcast, and also female entrepreneurship. So before we go anywhere, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and how did you come to start the Get Up Girl podcast?
Well, I am a natural born entrepreneur, never gone corporate, and I was always a little bit different as a young girl growing up where I felt like I didn't belong. I thought differently than everybody else. I had a lemonade stand. I was selling avocados from house to house, and I always had it inside me, yet I was trying to be like everybody that was going to college. I went to college, left that, and I wanted to be a dancer. And I wanted to be the next Jennifer Lopez. And this was back, in the mid to late 90s. And what I discovered is that my superpower was not performing with dance. My superpower was actually creating businesses and jumping off cliffs and building the parachute on the way down, so to speak. So that's how my entrepreneurship journey began. I opened up a dance studio in 2004 with not one business class, just street smarts. And I learned as I went on the journey. I've sold that business since then. I also created a DVD, also produced a music festival, opened up a fitness studio, a couple other things as well. And I just closed that fitness studio 2 months ago due to wanting to change and go online and also because of the pandemic. But that's my journey in a nutshell. And it's interesting because I am a creator and I go from thing to thing. So I think that I can confuse people because they're like, wait, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? And it's really embracing that because that's what I do. I create and I move on and I sell and I start new ventures.
So let's just touch a little bit back on the dropping out of college. What did you feel you weren't getting out of college? So obviously you had the drive and the passion to start your own businesses and college wasn't giving it to you. So what was that? What was the thing that made you realize, hey, this is not for me. Let's go and learn by doing.
Great question. I never felt that there was any communication or connection with the other people in class. I would go into these lecture halls of 500 people, 200 people, never talked to one of them. It was very isolated. I went to UC Santa Barbara, so if you're familiar with California, and it's a large university, and I didn't meet the right people. It wasn't my learning style. And as I got older, I learned that my learning style is audio and kinesthetic. I am not a visual learner. I'm not a reader. I'm a little bit dyslexic, and I just learned that many entrepreneurs, like all the entrepreneurs on Shark Tank, they're all dyslexic. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to embrace these things that make me different rather than trying to fit in like everybody else at the university.
Yeah, so I hear you there. So basically, you felt that the main, not the mainstream, but the kind of the traditional path wasn't really something that very much appealed to you. So how was it when you first wanted to start your own business? I mean, what did the people around you say? Obviously, dropping out of college is a big deal, right? And then you're saying, I'm going to become the next dancer. I'm going to be the next Jennifer Lopez. They must have looked at you and said, hey, you crazy person.
Bye, Rev. Well, I did 2 quarters at UC Santa Barbara, and I would call my mom every day, and she said, look, do 1 more quarter. So this was after the first quarter. And she said, if you still hate it, then come home. And here's the cool thing. She gave me the choice. She said, if you choose to leave, you are now on your own. And it was really beneficial to me as a business owner because it helped me traject my adulthood. And I was 17 when I went into college. So by the time I packed up my stuff, I was 18 years old. So I was very, very young. And she said, all right, cool, you made that choice and you are now on your own. So from then on, I made all my money on my own, put myself, got my own apartment, things like that. And everybody around me was like, what are you doing? You're crazy. And it was at that moment that I started to receive the opinions that people thought I was bananas. And I think now I have the muscle to receive all those opinions where before it stung a little bit harder.
Was it a lot of negativity, you think? around what you were trying to do?
No, I think they were trying to keep me safe. They were trying to protect me. So now I see it. That was the way that they showed love. But to me, I'm like, that's not love. Love was supporting me. But now I can see it in a different way.
Or give you a couple of $1,000s to start the business, right?
Yeah, right? Okay, I believe in you. Here you go, my cheerleader, right? Totally.
So, I mean, how was that first step? So obviously, you've got no experience in running a business. And to be honest, I agree with you. I'm a firm believer that, you can't really learn how to start a business. You've got to do it and then understand all the craziness that comes with it, right? And there's a lot of entrepreneur courses, and I know that you do a lot of coaching as well. But really, everyone's journey is different. It's unique to themselves, right? And so you can't.
It's like swimming. If you were to just read a book on swimming, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to go in the ocean now. It's like, no, you got to learn in a pool first. You just got to swim. You got to swim in the water. You can't learn it by a book.
So so I can understand you starting a dance studio. So, what was it like back then starting a dance studio? Was there a lot of competition? Were you the sole female entrepreneur, first person, female founder of a dance studio in your area? What was that like? And what kind of support outside your family did you get? Or did you get anything?
That's a great question. Because back in 2004, it was very different than it is now, right? There was no MySpace, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. So I started very old school where we had paper flyers and things like that. So back in the day for dance in Los Angeles, there weren't as many dance studios as there are now. So there was less competition, yet I had to pave the way. I was one of the pioneers. So I think now in 2020, it's a little more sexier and like, ooh, you're going to own a business. I think it's taken on a little more, it's more acceptable now. And I think with females than back in the 1990s or early 2000s. So I feel like I was one of the pioneers to start it. And there was less competition, yet there was nothing to really compare to. And I like that because I feel like when I compare to myself to others, I start to change my creative outlook. So I actually like it when I don't go to other businesses or I don't experience their way of doing things, because then it goes into my creative process and I'm not able to do it the way I do it. You know what's interesting, by Rev? I watched a documentary with Lady Gaga, and she says that when she goes into her creative process of doing a new album, she isolates herself. She doesn't talk to anybody because she feels that if she does, it goes into her creative process and then she will write the song or the album to what's going on in the world. And she doesn't want that to come in. And I feel very similar when I create.
So when you were starting out, what was your idea? Like, what was a goal? Did you have a big goal to begin with? Was it grand, I'm going to take over LA with dance? Or was it just, I want to get something up and running that can feed me?
Ooh, that's a good one. You know what? At that moment, the goal was to prove everybody wrong.
Right.
That's it. And you know what? I realized that that was not a healthy way to start something, because once I proved it, once I did it, I was bored. I was done. It's like, next. And then everybody around me is like, what? You just created this great dance studio and you're just going to walk away? Why? And they didn't understand. I'm like, because I did it already. Next. On to the next. Yeah, I was not the 40-year girl and I'm going to do this forever. I never saw it that way. I always saw it with an end in mind. You know how business owners will say, create this business already seeing if you're going to sell it or, close it or whatever. That's how I saw the business. I just wanted to prove others, prove my parents, and prove to me that I was capable of doing it.
It's funny, actually, because I was on another podcast. I was speaking to someone else, and they're actually a VC based out in Silicon Valley. And he was saying, he always encourages people to think of a lifestyle, right? Don't think about the sale at the end. Don't think about the yacht. Think about the lifestyle.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that today in the shower. I'm like, what is the essence? What do I want to feel in my life rather than I want to get XYZ? Because in my 20s, it was very XYZ. And when I got XYZ, I was still miserable. I was like, okay, next. I was always like, next, next, next. Now I go for the feeling of life. Like, what do I want to feel? I want to feel ease. I want to feel happy. I want to feel productive, like all things like that. That's what I'm shooting for. And then the businesses will be created moving forward that way.
So given that we're talking about female entrepreneurship, how hard was it being a female entrepreneur in 2004? And how has that changed now in 2020?
Oh, so different. Gosh, I mean, I can go down the rabbit hole, because in the 90s, when I was starting business and kind of just being that little hustler girl, I was one in a million. And then even in the 2000s, you're one in 1,000. And now I feel like everybody and their mother has hashtag Girlboss, and great. Yet I wonder that, because I talk to my girls, I talk to my sisters, I'm wondering, and I see our gals jump on the bandwagon, so to speak, and then they're actually overwhelming themselves because it's too much, because they're trying to be like other business owners, and gosh, this is a difficult one because I have a lot of girlfriends that left corporate, right? And then they actually hate owning a business, but they keep doing it because they're embarrassed or they have shame of quitting. And look, owning a business is not for everybody. Right? It's not for everybody. And we still need the worker bees. These are the people that keep us going on this planet. If every single person owned a business, then it would flip-flop. And I'm kind of seeing it start to flip-flop. So I'm wondering where it's going to go in the next 5 to 10 years of like everybody's going to, and when I say corporate, I even mean just being a worker. And it's not to impugn on workers when I call them worker bees, but you can only have a queen bee and then you need the worker bees. This is what creates life. So that's what I'm discovering now. Yet for the right female, owning a business is amazing. But again, please don't feel any shame if it's not for you, because this is not for everybody. That's what I'm noticing.
Yeah, I think so. I did a podcast on diversity a while back. I guess that must have been last year now. And what was interesting to see is that basically, when you're starting your own business, it doesn't really matter whether you're black, white, green, or brown, blue, male, female, whatever. The problems are there, right? It's the same sets of challenges. You need to if you're going to hire people, then you need to find the right people. If you are hiring people, then you need to make sure that there's enough money on the table that they can, you can employ them. You need to go and get sales. And there's so many things that you do. And actually it is a lifestyle, right? It's an entrepreneur lifestyle. Yeah. And if you are a person who likes to get their paycheck, knows what they need to do every day, has a very defined set, and security, has a defined set of goals that they need to reach, then that's one thing, right? But if you're someone who likes, I guess you and I embrace chaos a little bit more than other people.
Problem solving, that's got to be a superpower. I think in business, you got to be the eye of the storm and love problem solving and look ahead. You are playing chess all the time as a business owner. You're always looking to checkmate 10 moves ahead. Because if you're just looking at the move that you're doing, somebody's going to checkmate on you.
So, I mean, how was that? So as time progressed and, you started your studio and obviously more studios started popping up. I mean, nowadays it must be crazy simply because anyone with a camera is dancing, right?
Is a
dancer. So how did you? So what did you learn on that process? So you hit the point and you said, yes, now I've done it. Now what do I do? So what made you reach the next point? So what is it? When you when you stopped and took, you reflected on what you've been doing. Yeah. How did you kind of refocus onto the next phase? What motivated you to move forward? I guess
it took about 2 years for me to have that fed up feeling and to go, you know what, I'm done. Or maybe even more than 2 years. But now, as I have more wisdom, I'm not allowing it to take 2 years anymore to go, okay, it's time to move on. But I think the pivotal moment was when I was getting sick, like literally physically sick all the time because of the stress. And I was never at any family parties. I could never go anywhere. It was 365 days a year, a brick and mortar plus a dance studio with 700 dancers. A dance studio is a particular business. It's similar to a restaurant where it's like always going. It's always. And with a dance studio, you're dealing with kids, their mom, their dad, their grandma, their grandfather. I mean, put the family there. You're dealing with everybody. Compared to a different business, when you have a client, a B2C, it's just B2C. But the dance studio was B to F, B to family, and it was exhausting. And that's when I made the conscious boundary of, in my next business, I will not set it up this way where it's 365 and I can't scale without me. I felt like I couldn't scale without me. Now I make businesses that could scale without me.
Was there a lot, before I ask this question, someone said to me something when I was very young, about 15, 16, he said, the worst people to work for are the general public because they're always the experts and they're the most demanding and they want to pay the least. So I can hear
Everybody
you.
wanted a discount.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So, what was okay, so once you hit that limit and you understood that you wanted to pivot into the new business, what was that next business, and how much easier was it to set up the second one as opposed to the first?
When I had the dance studio, I was still creating other businesses simultaneously. However, they were not 365 businesses. They were not brick and mortars. They were events. I was producing a dance competition and a DVD and parties. I would do these parties on the weekends. It's interesting how I never just done one thing at a time. I get bored. Even though I was running a 365 a year business, I was still doing other things. But the next thing that happened was I took about a year off and I just needed to chill. And that was one of the best years yet. And that whole year, I did a lot of self-development. I invested in myself, in courses. I flew all over the world and went to every class in this particular big training. And that's what changed me. And the next business after that was the fitness studio. That one was set up where there was no front desk. Everything was done on your smartphone. We didn't take $1 in cash. I mean, the business was set up so simply where it just ran itself. I didn't have to be there. And that was the next business. And that was the one that I just closed 2 months ago.
So on your year off, what did you learn?
Wow. Woo! I learned that the stories I was telling was not creating more for my life. So I learned about stories, my words. I learned about listening. I learned about saying exactly what I needed to say. I don't need to say more than what I'm saying. I learned how to be self-aware of what exactly is going on with me, my spirit, my soul. I learned that I'm capable of doing things that I didn't think I was capable of. So I did a lot of physical things and a lot of mental things. I went to this camp called Warrior Camp, and it just sounded exactly like it sounds. And then I went to another one called Wizard Camp. It's the yin to the yang. And it was created by T. Harv Eker. He is the author of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And he created these camps, and these changed my life. It's similar to Tony Robbins, like Unleash Your Power, but yet like on steroids and for 7 days, a whole week. So imagine 200 hardcore business owners that are all like that red, strong type, and they all come together for 7 days, and it's transformative.
So is this where you got the idea to set up the Get Up Girl podcast, or did that come later?
That came later, yet I think things were starting to brew. Things were starting to shift where I saw things differently. So I think that was the seed that was planted, but I had no idea. I knew I wanted to do something different, but I had no idea what it was yet.
So let's talk about your podcast. What made you start that, and who are you broadcasting to?
For so many years of teaching females in dance and fitness, the biggest thing that I've realized is that as women, we believe it's from the outside in, but it's from the inside out. We think that if we are prettier, our life will be better. We believe that if we lose weight, we will be happier. We believe that if we have the family and the husband of our dreams, then everything's going to be wonderful. And I was noticing that my clients were not confident, even though they said they were, and like dying inside. And I created this coaching method without even the podcast yet. This was like 10 years ago, and how I was coaching them and how I was talking to them, because I knew as a female what I wanted to hear. And then the Get Up Girl was born because I was talking to my coach, and she asked me, what are you really good at? What do people ask you for advice all the time, right? What is your niche? What are you going to go towards? And I said, you know what? People always ask me, like, how do you get back up? Things happen in your life and you just keep getting back up. You keep going for it, where I would have given up. I'm like, oh my gosh, the Get Up Girl. And I got goosebumps, and it was born. And that's how it started.
So what are you talking about? You mentioned you have a 3-step program. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I have a 3-step process of how to get back up. And when you fall, I think a lot of women, and I'm just speaking for myself and the girls that I know, is that we get back up, but with like an FU attached to it, with like a I'm stronger, with like a I don't need you energy. And it's almost like you're putting up walls and barriers. And I think that's why we get closed off and we shelter ourselves. And then we're going through the masculine energy. We're going through the like, I'm tough, I don't need you energy. And so it's a 3-step process that is completely different than what I learned in all my self-development. And step 1 is to ask a question. When you ask a better question, you get results, you get awareness, you get answers that you never dreamt possible. Because what I noticed is when we get back up, we go into conclusion. We go into the end of the story. You're like, I'm going to do this. I don't need anybody. I'm going to do it like XYZ. And what I've noticed is when I lead with the question, then I'm able to open up more possibilities than what my brain can think of. So one of the best questions that I like to ask is, how does it get any better than this? And I ask it when things are great, and I ask it when things are crappy. Either way, how does it get better than this? Because a how question will create more to God, life, universe, and then it'll answer. The second part of the process is to get curious. Do not answer the question. And we were taught as young children to stop asking questions. Remember when we were a little kid and like, when are we going to get there? And why are we doing this? And your parents or adults said, oh my gosh, stop asking so many questions. Quiet. So we learned that record played in our head, stop asking questions, stop. So as adults, you don't raise your hand as often and ask questions. But if you're in a room with 3-year-olds, I've taught 3-year-olds for years and years. You ask any question, they will raise their hand even if they don't have the answer because they just want to answer it. They just want to ask a question. They love it. But it was taught out of us. So step 2 again, get curious, don't answer it. And then step 3 is pause, be open, and just wait for the awareness. That's it. The awareness can take 5 seconds or it could take 5 months. That's, I think, the hard part. That's the muscle you got to build. Is the waiting, is the openness. It's similar to prayer. Like you pray and you go, okay, you don't pray and then go, well, screw it. I'm just going to push up and go uphill against current, go downhill and just chill out. And I think that's where we get stuck is like, I'm asking questions. This is not working, Joanna. Yeah, but you're asking it with an FU energy, energy. So let's go through it one more time. Step 1 is ask a question. Step 2 is get curious and don't answer the question. And step 3 is pause and just be open for the awareness of what the answer is going to be. And in my experience and everybody else I've known, most of the time, 99.99% of the time, the answer, the awareness is way better than what I ever thought I can ever answer with my logical mind.
So, I mean, this is all great for life in general. I think it's not just about entrepreneurship, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
So I guess one question for you is you mentioned before that a lot of your friends had gone into business and were not satisfied. So do you know what the reason for that was? Why would they go into it? Is it because they didn't really understand the journey of what would be? Is it because they saw, as you mentioned before, people see that there's other people out there doing it, I got to go and do it. But of course, the entrepreneur world is quite male oriented, right? Everything is raise loads of money, get high valuations. And really, actually, that's only a small part of it. Really, what you want to do is be able to, put a roof over your head,
Yeah.
make enough money so that you can do the things you want in life, right? And the other bits are just beneficial.
Yeah.
So do people get sucked into this world of glamour? I can live my yacht. And is that what's enticing them? And do you think that's also true of the female entrepreneurs you met? Or is there something else that's pushing them in to that lifestyle and that world to take it on without them really wanting to do it?
I really like this question because what I've experienced watching my girlfriends that are like, oh my gosh, this is not fun, is that they discovered that they were able to do this for their employers. So they automatically assumed that they can do it for themselves. They're like, I'm making this employer. Like I have a friend, she worked for a big clothing company, huge, right? Worldwide clothing company. And she was opening these stores all over the world, and they were doing great. So she's like, I'm going to open my own clothing store. And unfortunately, it didn't work. But yet her superpowers were different of what it takes to actually own the business. And that's the biggest thing, I think. I love talking about superpowers. Like, what are you really good at? What can you do that nobody else can do the way you can? This is from the book, The Big Leap, by Gay Hendricks. So you have your zone of incompetence, zone of competence, and then you have your zone of genius. So when I say superpower, I also mean zone of genius, same thing. And so I think their zone of geniuses were doing different things, not being the visionary, not being the one that's going to jump, because you got to jump. And going back to, it's a lot of mindset. That's why when I gave the 3-step process, it's a lot for life, right? Life skills. Absolutely. Mindset is like number one for fitness, for business, for everything. We can't be strong on the outside until we're strong on the inside. And we think it's outside in, and it's inside out. I see people in fitness. They think it's going to happen in 30 days. That's outside in. I'm going to work this and I'm going to look like J-Lo in 30 days. No, we got to start with your mindset. That's why 95 to 98% of people will gain the weight back. They'll gain the weight back. Same thing with businesses. Why do 95% of businesses don't make it past the 5-year mark? Because of the mindset. They want to go, I know the business, but they don't work on this. And I think that's why it didn't work, by Rev, of what I've experienced with my friends.
So you talked about the big leap and superpower. That's a very difficult question to ask people, right?
Yeah.
Because most people won't really, A, know, or B, be
boastful. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how do you get past that?
I got really good at saying, this is my superpower. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When somebody asked me, I didn't want to boast about it. Now, I say it all the time. This is my superpower. This is my superpower. Everybody on my team knows what my superpower is. Superpowers. And they also know what my not superpowers are. My zone of incompetence. Don't give that to Joanna because she is not good at it. Like, I hate admin. I hate managing staff. I hate talking about bills to clients. Like, I can do it. But don't put me there because that's not going to scale the business. What's going to scale the business is putting me in a workshop so I can get my mind sharper. What's my zone of genius is talking on podcasts like this and talking to other individuals and using my voice. So I really like how you brought that up because I have asked people like, what's your superpower? I'll be out on a date or I'm just asking Joe Blow. And they're like, what do you mean? They can't answer it because we're not taught to go, what are you really good at? Like to know, zero in.
So how do you tease it out of people when you're talking to them?
Couple questions I ask them is, what do you enjoy doing? What comes so easily to you? Where you think everybody else on the planet can do it. You know those things that you do? You're like, doesn't everybody know this? Sure, no, not everybody else can do it. And the next question I ask them is, what can you do that nobody else could do? Just like you. Where you're like the only one on this planet that can do it. And then the third question is the one that my business coach asked me is, what does everybody ask you for advice on? Think about it. What does everybody text you on, call you and say, hey, bro, hey, sis, what? Can you help me with this? That's your superpower. That's what you're known for. Because everybody knows when you're a fly on the wall and people are talking about you, they're talking about this is the good thing that you can do well. That's your superpower. That's your zone of genius.
So you mentioned your coach a couple of times. How important is it for people to have one? How important has it been for you to have one? What have you gotten out of it? And I guess from a female entrepreneurship, role models, there are plenty out there, but they're not always as broadcast as the men are, right? So
yeah. OMG. Wow. I started my first maybe 5 years of entrepreneurship with no coach. And I knew I needed a coach. I'm like, okay, I need a coach because I felt like I was playing a basketball game with no coach. I mean, what parents out there would drop off their 7-year-old kid to basketball practice with no coach and just go, bye, I'll pick you up later. That's how I see entrepreneurship with no coach. You're out there playing a game, just like bouncing a ball and there's no coach. There's no leadership. That's how I see it. It is pivotal. And then when people ask me, sometimes they don't like the answer I give them. I say, oh, I have 5 coaches plus. They're like, really? I go, yep. I'm in this mastermind. So I meet with this coach for this. everyone has a purpose. Now, again, I didn't start with 5 or more. I started with 1. But it's just like an athlete. An athlete will have an offensive coach, their maybe massage therapist coach, their mindset coach. I mean, think about Olympic athletes. Then they have what's offense? Then you have defense coach, right? It has been so important. So here's the big thing that I've learned. I have female coaches and I have male coaches. And what I've noticed is that they're completely different. And I receive different benefits from them. Like I have my male coach, and here's the interesting thing. He's the one that actually helped me traject my business more than my female gals. And I think because most men think differently than girls, right? And I don't want to get any backlash from my gals, but what I've noticed in 20 years in business, my female business owners don't talk about money, and my male business owners talk about money. Like women don't stand up and go, hi, my name is Joanna Vargas, and this is my business, in your 30-second speech. And last year my revenue was XYZ, whatever. I'm in my male business groups, and that's what they do. Their 30-second pitch is how much the revenue was and how much they improved this year. And I'm up 22%, and everybody claps. Yeah. Girls, they'll say, well, you can share your revenue if you want. That's the biggest difference that I've noticed. And that's why I like males.
So what do you want to see more? I think it's going to be a controversial question, I guess, but what do you want to see more in the female psyche? Like, what would you want to see more of?
Wow. By Rev, this is what I would love to see, where women don't have the attachment or stigma around the number, where so you lost money this year, or so you're making less this year. Just say it. There's no attachment to it. I would love for us to say our numbers out loud and help each other up that way. And I want to share a little piece of information. In the United States, because I know you're in London, but at least in the US, 33% of businesses, and this was a couple years ago, are owned by females. So everybody's like, yay, good, women are coming up, yay, right? Okay, cool, nice. Now, how much of the percent of the revenue is made by those 33% women out of all the revenue of USA a couple years ago? It's 4%.
Oh, wow.
So, right? Everybody I tell, when I heard that, I cried. I literally teared up and go, oh, we're holding our own glass ceilings, because I think we also do it to each other as women. We want to get a discount from our girlfriends, and these are the hairdressers. These are the house cleaners. These are the women that are the solopreneurs, and they say that they're a business owner, right? It's an LLC, but yet the revenue is so low. And so I think that's what needs to change, where we don't hold our own glass ceiling to each other. So when I learned that, now I pay my house cleaner more. I tip my hairdresser more. I give more now, rather than I was always trying to get like a deal. Oh, can you do this for me? And I'm like, I'm doing it to my own sister.
But then when you do pay more, do people appreciate that?
Oh, okay. I've noticed that they do, yet it's a little uncomfortable. They don't think they're worth it. Like I have a seamstress. She is the best seamstress. I mean, this lady has 38 years of seamstress experience. This lady can make anything, right? And she wanted to charge me like $4 an hour or something. I'm like, I know that took you an hour. And she was going to charge me like so low. And I gave her $100, and she was like, no. And I calmed down. I got really soft with her, and I said, you are a great seamstress. I would love to pay you this because you have 38 years experience, right? And she looked at me, and you could just see her heart melt. And then she said, thank you. Now I could tell it was difficult for her, yet she did it. And so, yeah, I'm like, if I were to pay a coach, that coach would have been $500 an hour, right? And this girl, she wanted to charge me like $17 for something. And I was happier with the clothes that she sewed. I'm like, that was worth $100, right?
So do you think that's a problem of people not understanding their value, though, right? And their worth?
Yes. And I wonder, is that a thing that we were raised, my ladies? And I think it's changing with the Gen Zers. No, Gen Z. Yeah, I was going to say Gen, but the Gen Zers, right? You're like, I can't keep
hard to keep track.
Gen
Yeah, no idea.
But I think it's changing a little bit, But I think, women of my age in their 40s, I think we're raised in the 70s and 80s. It was like your value was a little bit less. So I think it's changing.
No, I definitely. I mean, I was raised in the 70s and 80s as well, and so the way the conversations were back then, completely different from what
Completely different,
you're
right?
having now, right? And I
Yeah.
can see my nieces; they are they're very very different from, let's say, my sister.
Right. I see my niece. She's 9. I'm like, wow, I'm so hopeful for the future, because I was not like that at 9. I didn't have that confidence and to speak up, and it was very different. So I'm very hopeful.
So, last couple of questions for you now. If you what did your mum say after the first business? After you went back and you said you're on your own, and you went and you made a success of it, what did she say?
Well, both my father and my mom were like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Like, they just kept saying the word crazy. You're crazy. What are you doing? It's not going to work. And then I think it took her about a year to see that it was coming around. And then afterwards, then she was my biggest fan, right? Then my mom was a dancer when she was pregnant with me. And here's the fun story. She has a picture when she was on tour on ballet, and she's 3 months pregnant with me. So what she did was, a few years into the dance studio, she blew up the photo, and she goes into the dance studio and nails it on the wall to let everybody know that I was a dancer because she was pregnant with me. So it took her some time to kind of come around and go, okay, now I see she's actually, she actually can do this. And that's what I always tell young kids, or when I'm mentoring them, because they tell me, I don't want to do this, but my parents want me to do, X, Y, Z. Like, I was blessed with the courage to stand up to my parents, to go, okay, or to walk away. And my mom said, okay, I'm going to cut you off. Okay. I had the courage. I don't think all kids have that courage. So I think it's learning that courage, then, if you don't have it, to stand up to them and go, okay, are you willing to be cut off?
It was funny, actually. I spoke to someone the other day, millennial or generation, whatever the generation is
Whatever.
now. And his plan was to stay at home and in his mum's basement building his business until the age of 31, which I kind of thought, it's nice, but surely your parents want to get rid of you at some point, right? Like, 31. But if you're making money, just leave, experience the world, right? Go pay rent.
Yeah, you know what? I think by being out on my own, I learned that I can be through anything. Like, I had my face kicked in. That's why when this pandemic hit, I was like, this is nothing. I've been sued. I've been on the floor. I mean, we didn't even get into those. I've lost a lot of money in business ventures, many business ventures, so much money. I mean, I can't even tell you. And I'm like, this is nothing, right? But I think, talking about that gentleman, I wonder if you'll ever get your face kicked in. Have you ever been punched in the face, so to speak? I don't know if you remember the movie Fight Club. I love that movie with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. And they talk about getting hit in the face, getting punched. Like, it's such a metaphor of life, because when you're punched, then you're not afraid of other things. You're like, I've been punched in the face before. That's not going to scare me. But if you've never been punched in the face, physically or metaphorically, yeah, you're going to be afraid. And then if you're never out there alone, then are you going to move forward the trajectory of your business, because you don't know what it's like to literally have $1 and go, okay, this is what I'm going to eat with for 3 days. And then you're going to learn how to use $1 and stretch it.
And it's amazing how far you can take $1 as well. I had a 3-course meal on £1 once. Yeah.
I lived I lived at Jack in the Box in college, right? Because I'm like, I have 90. I remember it was $1.07. Well, you guys have pounds, so we had $1.07. I would literally get $1.07, and then I would change that chicken sandwich and add ketchup and add this, and it was, like you said, a 3-course meal. I'm like, this is what I was really skinny. That's what I survived.
So, last question for you, and it's a question I ask everyone. If you could go back in time 20 years and give advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
I would absolutely tell my younger Joanna, do not buy other people's opinions, being that the opinions create more or they create less. Either way, they're just opinions and they're not yours. Because when you buy them, you're going to make them true and they're going to make them yours. Because, honey, you're going to end up getting rid of them in your 40s. So just don't buy them now. That's what I would tell her.
So that's interesting, because then how does that fit in with the whole coaching piece? Or is that something slightly different that you're talking about when you talk about buying opinions?
It totally goes into the coaching, because the number one thing I tell my clients is everything that your thoughts and feelings are not yours. They're not yours. Everything you're feeling is you're picking up everybody else's stuff. It's everything that you've been programmed with. And when I really got this is when my life changed. This was about 6 years ago. So even after all those workshops that I did that I was telling you about, this was after. This was like the next level of self-development when I really realized this has nothing to do with me. This is theirs. This is theirs. And knowing what's mine by Rev and knowing what's everybody else's. I think when you get that, woo, man, your life is like shot to the moon.
Excellent. Well, we kind of have to end it there.
I know we could keep going forever, huh? This was a good one.
But yeah, so thanks for the conversation. It's been great. How can people get in touch with you?
Okay, 2 ways. Please follow me and DM me on Instagram. I live there most often. Joanna Vargas Official. And I would love to hear your takeaways from today's show. And you can visit my website at thegetupgirl.net. And there I have free videos and coaching, and I would love to connect with you there.
Thanks for that, Joanna. And if anyone who's listening to the podcast hasn't subscribed yet, you can find us on Apple, Google, or the great podcast places. So subscribe now. Thanks a lot, Joanna. It's been great.
Thank you. Subscribe. Bye, everybody.